Hey guys, welcome back to Blue Tongue TV, and today what we're going to look at is the most commonly asked question when it comes to blue tongues, and that is my blue tongue a boy or a girl? Basically, how do I sex my blue tongues? There's a few different ways of doing it, and we're going to try and walk through each one, and none of them are foolproof, none of them have been claimed to be 100% successful, but what they are, with a collection of a good set of eyes and a little bit of technical know-how, you can get pretty close to that. So let's have a crack. So first up, and this is probably the technique that most of you hobbyists can employ at home, and that is just looking at some of the physical external dimorphic differences between male and female animals. And what I've got here is, this is a female blotch blue tongue, and the key features when looking at gender on this animal for me is that at the top of her shoulders there, they start comparatively narrow, and the width of the whole body remains the same all the way down the animal, and it's quite a long affair which basically has a similar width, as I said, from top to bottom down the animal. Now when you compare that to a male, which I'll grab here, you will see a slight difference. This guy has wider shoulders, and as you go down the animal it tapers, sort of has a triangular feel from top to bottom. So wider shoulders and then tapers down to the tail. So here we're comparing head shape and size. So as you look at them, on the left we have a female which has a smaller, rounder head, and then on the right we have a male which has a larger head with a pointier snout. Now this is another pointer. Again, you're going to have anomalies where you're going to have a female with a larger head and you may have a male which has a comparatively smaller head, but generally across the board in comparable animals that would be the case. Male with a larger, pointier snout and larger head, female with a smaller, rounder head. Okay, so in the breeding season on the males, just before they come up to the window within which they are sexually active, the hemipenes swell on either side, and you can see them quite prominently there. And on top of that, if you actually massage the hemipene, you can actually extract semen from the males, as I'm doing there. Occasionally, males will shed this sperm within their enclosure. Care must be taken, however, when identifying these sperm plugs, as some urates may look similar. And as you do it, you can actually see a partial glimpse of the blood vessel that actually feeds blood into the hemipene. This here is a female, and as you can see, it's a very rounded affair from side to side across the cloaca. You've got a narrowing here which goes wider as the tail progresses. And there really isn't a lot going on here. As I said, it's quite a smooth, rounded affair. And when we try to massage the cloaca here, as I've done with the males, you actually find that there isn't very much that comes out. There is sort of a much smaller blood vessel, but it is considerably different to what you would see in and around the male's cloaca. Another method which is used by some is physically everting the hemipenes and popping. Now to me, that is not an accurate method because you're actually looking to detect hemipenes. So you're essentially saying by default, if you can't find hemipenes, then it's a female. And all animals are different, and some of them won't physically allow you to do so. I mean, like this guy here, you might be able to exert a small amount of pressure here, but to me, you're only going to potentially cause issues and injuries if you're going to really force the hemipenes out of every single animal. And remember, when looking for a method to determine gender, it has to be pliable across every single animal. Otherwise, it's not really of use. So we have two adult males here, and immediately upon seeing each other you can see some nervous behaviour, and there he goes, he just bites the other male straight on the nose. And the other male is sort of putting up with it for a little while, but there's a little bit of dominance there, and as he's let go, you'll start to see the bodies sort of arc, they'll make themselves bigger towards each other in a little bit of defensive display, just to sort of ward the other one off. As you can see, the other guy's now coming to the party and realising that he's got some confrontation. And there we go, now both of them are involved, and yeah, from here it usually gets pretty wild. Okay, so now we've got male female, and the male, we're in the middle of breeding season, so your male has gone straight for the female. He's bitten her sort of 2/3 of the way up the body in a position where he believes he can hold her so that he can perform the act of copulation. And he'll keep biting in this area and letting go as sort of a bit of a courtship. And this seems to go on for sort of anywhere from 5 minutes up to 15 minutes. And then, as you can see, he bites and lets go, bites and lets go, and sort of gets himself in position. The female, of course, is sort of testing his strength in a little bit of nature's natural selection to see whether she believes he's strong enough to, if you like, sire her progeny. And then once in position, he'll be stroking his arm on the body, as you can see on that side, to let her know that he's ready to mate, and he'll brush his tail up and down the side of hers. And then when she's ready, she'll slightly lift the tail so he can sort of get in. In this case, I've just lifted the tail because of the slippery surface, and he'll rub his cloaca at the back of the tail, and then there you go. Once he's found the spot, he will avert the hemipene, and intromission will occur, and he will, as you can see, stay inside the female for anywhere from sort of 5 to 10 seconds up to 20 seconds whilst he ejaculates, and hopefully then you have the result of a gravid female. Okay, so then he lets go, and you'll see that his hemipene is still averted, and as you can see, it's quite an intricate part of the anatomy, and again, that's a reason why I'm against really averting these manually. As you can see, it takes him quite a while to draw that back in, and manhandling that really is not in the best interest of the animal. And yeah, once he's pulled that back in, as you can see, we're finished. So here we have two sibling females, and personally this is how I would split the behaviour between females. Sibling females tend to act largely indifferent towards one another. As you can see, a little bit of licking, but essentially not even recognising that the other's there. It's as if they're completely comfortable with the other one's presence. Yeah, so now what we'll do is we'll interact two females that aren't related. And as you can see, immediately your animal here is a little bit more jumpy about the presence of the other animal. Now if we can just keep them in proximity for a few seconds, you might get to see that a little bit. You can see a slight arching of the back there, and she's giving it a nip on the foot, and they just turn around and just give each other a little bit of a bite. So there you have it, two siblings interacting and two non-related animals. Again, now this is where it's going to make it hard to determine, because you're then going to get overlapping behaviours because males will fight as well as females. So we've looked at half a dozen different methods that you guys at home can use when sex IDing your blue tongues. As I've said previously, none of them are 100% accurate, but when used in conjunction with one another, you can build a pretty convincing case to decide whether your bluey is in fact a boy or a girl. Now what we're going to do, we're going to hop over to the classroom with Dr. Steve, who's going to look at some more technical veterinary methods to determine whether your beloved pet is indeed a boy or a girl. Cheers.
There are multiple methods that veterinarians can use to assist blue tongue keepers to identify the sex of their animals. Much like the methods keepers can use themselves, they each have their pros and cons. I'm going to discuss the use of ultrasound and plain X-rays, contrast X-rays and surgical sexing. The use of ultrasonography and plain X-rays is generally limited to being able to identify females by detecting follicles over a threshold size. Male organs are often not able to be identified. The thickness of a blue tongue scales and the air trapped in between them can also make ultrasonography difficult. Using ultrasound to identify sex is often easier in monitor species. Here is an adult parenti being ultrasounded by Dr. Josh Linus. You can see this animal has several large ovarian follicles, which are circular in shape, identifying it as female. Both ultrasound and plain X-rays are often capable of identifying developed fetuses. Here is an ultrasound showing the spine of a fetus, and in this ultrasound, you can actually see the heartbeat of another fetus with the red and blue showing blood flow in and out of the heart. Using contrast radiography to identify the sex of blue tongues has been a recent method made available to keepers, and has showed promise in its accuracy and reliability to do so, even in lizards as young as 3 to 4 months old. A liquid contrast is introduced into the lizard's cloacal pockets using a blunt-tipped catheter. I prefer to use an olive-tipped lacrimal cannula, which is normally used to flush the tear ducts of dogs and cats. You can see the tip of this catheter is rounded. This prevents trauma to tissue during contrast administration. Lizards do not require anesthesia or sedation to introduce the contrast into their cloacal pockets. The catheter is inserted similarly as the sexing probe is in snakes. A very small amount of contrast is introduced into the organ on each side. The lizard is then placed into a plastic tube to assist with restraint whilst the X-rays are taken in 2 different views. The shape of the male's hemipenes differs to that of the female's hemiclitors, with the aid of the contrast. In the dorsoventral view, the view from above, males' hemipenes are wider and spiraling in shape. Females' hemiclitors are thinner and sharply angled. In the horizontal beam, the view from the side, the spiraling shape of the male's hemipenes is also visible, with the females having thin, straight horizontal hemiclitors. This technique has been shown to be reliable in identifying sex in lizards 15 cm snout to vent length and larger. Any vet is capable of learning how to perform this method, but will become more proficient with experience. Cost will vary clinic to clinic and is associated primarily with paying for the vet's time and X-rays, but is minimized without the need of other drugs, such as anesthetics or sedatives. The last method I will discuss is surgical sexing. Lizards are sedated and anesthetized. A small endoscope is inserted through a small incision made in the lizard's flank to visualize the animal's testes or ovaries within the body cavity. This method is arguably the most accurate way to definitively sex a blue tongue, but is more invasive and the cost to perform considerably higher. Hopefully you have found the video to be helpful in assisting you to identify the sex of your blue tongue skinks. Thanks for watching another episode of Blue Tongue TV.